Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. The Quad leaders met, they condemned terrorism, but they failed to name the perpetrators, they failed to call out Pakistan. What is holding them back? Is India being let down by its so-called strategic partners? We'll discuss that tonight. Also on the show, will Donald Trump deport Elon Musk, and will Musk launch a political party to challenge Trump? The dollar dives, why America's mighty currency has hit a 50-year low, and what does this mean for the world economy? Modi's Global South Blitz. 8 days, 5 nations, 1 mission. How India's Prime Minister is reshaping ties and reclaiming influence. It's China versus the Dalai Lama. The succession drama is heating up, with the Tibetan leader challenging Beijing in a new statement. What is China's new hypersonic missile that runs on kerosene? Is this the future of warfare? A Japan Airlines flight nosedives. Is air travel becoming more dangerous? A cartoon controversy explodes in Turkey. Where is the line between freedom of expression and religious offense? 80 militants killed in a sweeping counter-offensive in Mali. What is happening in West Africa? And the Squid Game effect. Why are violence and gore dominating global entertainment? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Bangladesh's former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina sentenced to 6 months in prison. She was convicted of contempt of court and handed the sentence in absentia. This is the first verdict against Hasina since she was ousted in August last year. The Awami League leader also faces charges of crimes against humanity. Hasina has denied all accusations. In the US, the ISKCON temple in Utah is attacked in a suspected hate crime. More than 24 gunshots were fired over several nights at the temple. India has condemned the attack and urged local authorities to take prompt action. A similar incident occurred in March when a temple in California was desecrated. The US halts some weapons shipments to Ukraine. This includes air defense missiles and other precision munitions. The Pentagon fears that its stockpiles are too low. Ukraine summons a senior American diplomat, warning that delays in military aid from its key ally would quote-unquote encourage Russia. Iran suspends cooperation with the United Nations as nuclear watchdog. This comes after the 12-day war with Israel and strikes by the US on Tehran's nuclear facilities. Iran has criticized the International Atomic Energy Agency for its silence on the Israeli and American attacks. And the Hong Kong government proposes recognizing the rights of same-sex couples. In 2023, Hong Kong's top judge had delivered a landmark decision. They had confined marriage to opposite-sex unions, but called for recognizing the legal rights of same-sex couples. The judges had set the government a deadline of 2 years. A few years back, Quad was the it bloc. It sounded cooler than G7 or G20. It had more purpose than NATO. And its members were vibrant and diverse democracies: Japan, the United States, Australia, and India. But a pandemic and multiple wars later, is that still the case? Well, the name is still cool, but the purpose, not as much. You see, any group thrives on solidarity. Its members must stand together during crisis, but the Quad appears half-hearted. Yesterday, its foreign ministers met in Washington. After the meeting, they issued a joint statement, and that statement mentions the Pahalgam attack. Let me quote: "We condemn in the strongest terms the terrorist attack in Pahalgam. Jammu and Kashmir on April 22, 2025, which claimed the lives of 25 Indian nationals and one Nepali citizen while injuring several others. We call for the perpetrators, organizers and financiers of this reprehensible act to be brought to justice without any delay. The condemnation is welcome, but frankly, it's also easy. Anybody can condemn the murder of 26 innocent civilians. The question is, can you call out the murderers? Can you call out their sponsors? Apparently, the Quad cannot. They say the perpetrators and organizers must be brought to justice, but why not name this organizer? India has publicly accused Pakistan of plotting the Pahalgam attack, but the Quad statement does not even mention Pakistan. Chances are India would not have liked that. Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar dropped a hint. He said India had a right to defend itself against terrorism.
The world must display zero tolerance. Victims and perpetrators must never be equated. And India has every right to defend its people against terrorism. And we will exercise that right. We expect our Quad partners to understand and appreciate that.
He said he expects the Quad partners to understand India's position. But do they? Look at their actions. The US president hosted Pakistan's army chief last month. Donald Trump called him a great man. That's what he called Asim Munir, a great man. Then we have Australia. They have long-standing defense ties with Pakistan. They carry out counter-terrorism drills together. They even conduct military exchanges. And I must add here, it's not like these countries trust Pakistan. Both the US and Australia know Islamabad well. These two countries, the US and Australia, led the NATO operations in Afghanistan. So they're both aware of Pakistan's double game. Yet they do not call out Pakistan. Not even after Pakistani terrorists attack their Quad partner India. Hence Jaishankar's reminder. India has a right to defend itself. A similar message came from India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. He spoke to his American counterpart, the US Defence Secretary, and reports say Rajnath Singh talked about preemptive strikes. Preemptive strikes, this is very significant. So far, India's actions have been retaliatory. They have come in response to an attack. The surgical strike was a retaliation. Balakot was a retaliation, and so was Operation Sindoor, a retaliation. But now, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh says preemptive strikes are on the table. Basically a preventive operation. So India won't wait around to be attacked. India will hit first to deter or to prevent a terror attack. And this marks a major shift in India's anti-terrorism policy. It's a hardening of India's position. Naturally, New Delhi will expect its partners to understand that, to support India in this fight. Again, the question is, will they? Will the Quad partners extend this support? We say this month is a good litmus test. Pakistan is chairing the United Nations Security Council in July. Pakistan is the chair of the UNSC. They are planning to hold 2 open sessions. These can be briefings, debates or votes. But more importantly, they're open to the press, meaning these sessions will be broadcast across the world. Pakistan wants to rake up Kashmir at these sessions. They will want to globalize the Kashmir issue. Obviously, India will not like that. But unfortunately, India will not be at the council. India is not a member of the United Nations Security Council. So we'll have to rely on our friends, the permanent members, the US, Britain, France, Russia. China, of course, is the 5th permanent member, but China is not a friend of India. So we have 4 permanent members who call themselves India's friends and partners. Will they block Pakistan's designs at the United Nations Security Council, or will they let it slide? Their record is not inspiring. After the Pahalgam attack, they let India down. New Delhi wanted a statement that called out the perpetrators. The attack was carried out by Lashkar Proxy, a group that calls itself the Resistance Front, TRF. India wanted the name of TRF to be included in the statement, but Pakistan lobbied against it, and in the end, there was no mention of TRF in the United Nations statement. And now Pakistan is leading the UNSC, so India's challenge is well cut out. We won the military battle in Operation Sindoor. Now it is time to fight the diplomatic battle. And the Quad is a good place to start. It's a smaller group, smaller than the G20 or the United Nations. And it has scope for bilateral lobbying. It is made up of close Indian partners. All of them need India's help to take on China because India is the only Quad member that borders China, the only member with a comparable population and capacity. It is time we leverage that. New Delhi will be hosting the Quad summit later this year. Let's hope for a stronger statement then.
The bill as amended is passed.
It began as a bromance. It has turned into brinkmanship. We're talking about Elon Musk and Donald Trump. At the start of this year, they were inseparable. Musk poured millions into Trump's re-election campaign. Trump handed Musk the reins of a government agency. They lived in close quarters. They were always together. It seemed like nothing could break their alliance. But something did. Donald Trump's tax bill, or what he calls the big, beautiful bill. This is the US president's signature policy proposal. It includes tax cuts worth $4.5 trillion, border security boosts, and a healthcare rollback. This is broadly what the bill contains. Now, this bill went to the House of Representatives. That's the lower house of the US Parliament, or the Congress as they call it. And this lower house passed the bill. Then it went to the Senate, or the upper house. They had a marathon voting session. They made some changes to the bill, and then they passed it. Now the bill goes back to the lower house with those changes. It may or may not pass, but Donald Trump is in a hurry. He wants to sign this bill into law. He wants the bill on his desk by the 4th of July, the US Independence Day. So that is the status of the big, beautiful bill. Trump wants it cleared ASAP. But Musk does not like it, because it runs against everything he did for the past few months. Elon Musk was the head of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. It's an agency that he set up to trim bureaucratic fat and to slash costs. But now Trump wants this bill. It will add $650 billion to the US deficit, meaning it will add $650 billion in US government spending. So instead of slashing costs, Trump is adding to it. And Musk is opposing it. He called out the president's mega proposal. Of course, Trump did not take it lightly. Fireworks followed. The two men came to blows on social media. Then they calmed down for a bit, but now they're at it again. As the bill headed to the Senate, Elon Musk opposed it again, this time with a new threat. Let me quote from what he said. Elon Musk said, "If the insane spending bill passes, the America Party will be formed the next day." So what is he talking about? What is the America Party? The US has a two-party system. There are two main parties in this country, the Democrats and the Republicans. But this is not officially mandated by law. So the Americans can have more political parties if they want. And this is what Elon Musk is proposing / threatening to do. He wants to form a new political party, and he's calling it the America Party. He says both Republicans and Democrats are pro-spending. They are both adding to the US debt. US debt is already at a record $37 trillion. So Musk wants a new movement. He wants a new political party that is anti-debt and pro-innovation. But can he do it? And that also depends on how serious he is about it. Building a political party is tougher than building cars or rockets, especially when the US president is not in your corner.
Concerned the Republicans are going to be swayed by Musk and his money.
No, I don't think so. I think what's going to happen is Doge is going to look at Musk. And if Doge looks at Musk, we're going to save a fortune. Thank you very much, everybody. I don't think you should be playing that game with me.
You heard Donald Trump. He's not too happy with Musk's criticism, and he made that clear on his social media. He even threatened deportation, sending Elon Musk back to South Africa. That's what Trump has hinted at. He's also targeting Musk's business. Listen to this.
I don't know. I think we'll have to take a look. We might have to put Doge on Elon. You know what Doge is? Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? He gets a lot of subsidies, Peter. But Elon's very upset that the EV mandate is going to be terminated.
And so it comes full circle. Doge was Elon Musk's pet project and Trump was Elon Musk's presidential candidate. Now Trump is going after him and he's using Doge to beat up Musk. Trump wants to use the same agency to audit Elon Musk. And Musk is yet to respond. So far we've seen no insults, no courtroom threats and no Elon 2028 campaign ads, at least not yet. So is Musk licking his wounds or is he plotting revenge? It's hard to say. But make no mistake, this is not just a battle of egos. This is a battle between two visions of power. On one side, we have Donald Trump. He wants to ride the wave of old school populism. On the other side, there's Elon Musk. He wants to hack American politics like he did with cars and space. And somewhere in between, America is supposed to decide who to trust with its future. At this point, they may as well flip a Doge coin. Forget Mission Impossible. Trump versus Musk is a real summer blockbuster. The world's richest man versus the US president in 4D. This is no ordinary feud. This is a billionaire brawl with real-world stakes. Every insult can rattle investors. Every tweet can jolt the markets. And the timing? Impeccably terrible. The US dollar is showing signs of weakness. It has lost over 10% of its value in the last 6 months. This is the dollar's worst performance in more than 50 years. The last time this happened was in 1973. And to add insult to injury, other currencies are appreciating. The euro, for instance, has gained by over 12%. The Swiss franc is up by more than 13%. The Japanese yen, nearly 8%. Even gold is outperforming the US dollar. Gold has gained 25% this year. Plus, riskier currencies are doing better than the US dollar, like Ghana's CD, the Taiwanese dollar, and Mexico's peso. They've all registered double-digit gains. So there's a clear shift. Investors are moving away from the US dollar. They haven't dumped the American currency yet, but they're certainly diversifying. They're trying to lower the risk. And what is driving this sentiment? Experts blame US President Donald Trump, his mixed signals on economic policy, his constant back and forth on tariffs, and his relentless attacks on the US Federal Reserve and its chief, Jerome Powell. Trump has been challenging the Fed's autonomy ever since he took office. He wants to sack Jerome Powell and appoint a loyalist in his place. But Trump cannot do that. He cannot remove the chair of the Federal Reserve, because a Federal Reserve chief has a fixed tenure of 4 years. A president cannot remove him. So Trump is doing the only thing that he can. He is attacking the Fed chief.
We have a moron at the head of the Fed. He's a moron.
Speaking of Jay Powell, do you have a top choice or somebody?
I do. I have 2 or 3 top choices, actually.
Such remarks have made investors jumpy, and all of this is hurting the dollar's reputation, pushing investors towards other assets like gold, the euro, the franc, and the yen. And this does not bode well for America. A weaker dollar could make imports expensive. It could stoke inflation. It could make US debt costlier. In fact, in the month of May, ratings agency Moody's downgraded America's debt. It reduced US credit rating from AAA to AA1. Now, AAA or AAA is the gold standard. Any debt rated AAA is considered a safe investment. The US had this status until 2 months back, but now they've lost it, and Moody's cited several reasons for this downgrade, like America's massive debt pile, almost $37 trillion in national debt. This is a loan that the US government has taken to meet its expenses, almost $37 trillion. Now look at the interest payments on these loans. The interest exceeds $950 billion. That's a lot of money going every year as interest. Obviously, this is a major concern. The other reason given for Moody's downgrade is this: tax cuts and political gridlock in Washington. So in simpler terms, the US is borrowing more, it is paying more interest, and it is failing to fix its revenues. For an investor, these are clear red flags. The depreciating dollar and the US government struggling to manage its books. This has eroded investor confidence in the US. Their borrowing costs could go up. And this has implications for everyone. This could lead to higher inflation. It could hurt not just American citizens, but the whole world. And I'll tell you why. The US dollar and the American government debt are pillars of global finance. More than 58% of the world's cash reserves are in the US dollar. 58%. These reserves are held by central banks, so a weaker dollar impacts all of them. And then we have the US government debt. More than 20% of US government bonds are held by foreigners, and a large number of these investors are governments, like Japan. In April, Japan held over $3 trillion in US government bonds. The United Kingdom came second with over $800 billion invested, and China ranked third with over $750 billion. So governments and central banks have parked large amounts of cash in the US dollar and in US debt. Today, they are both under strain. If Washington does not fix it, it will hurt the whole world. So Trump may like to shake things up and disrupt the status quo. His bold style may win him votes and followers, but for markets and the global economy, his erratic policy making poses major risks. "8 days, 5 countries, 1 mission." Prime Minister Narendra Modi has started his longest foreign trip in a decade. You don't see such marathon visits anymore. Leaders do short stops nowadays. But this trip is very different. It is about reaching new frontiers, rekindling old partnerships, and creating a strong coalition. First, let's look at the travel plan. Prime Minister Modi took off from New Delhi this morning. He arrived in Ghana a short while back. This is the first such trip from India in 3 decades. The first prime ministerial visit from India to Ghana in 3 decades. From Ghana, Prime Minister Modi will fly to the Caribbean, to Trinidad and Tobago. And it will be the first such trip since 1999. From the Caribbean, the Indian Prime Minister will fly south to Argentina. It will be the first such trip in 57 years. After that, Prime Minister Modi will hop over to Brazil. First, he will attend the BRICS summit, then he will take part in a state dinner, and on his way back, he will make his final stop in Namibia in southern Africa. The first such trip since 1998. Now, if you look at this itinerary, two trends stand out. Number one, a lot of these trips are coming after massive gaps, 30 years, 57 years, 26 years. Such huge gaps can derail diplomatic progress. It gives the impression that you're not as invested. And trend number two, it's clearly an attempt to woo the global south. In fact, Prime Minister Modi himself admitted to this. Let me quote from his departure statement. "I am confident that my visits to the 5 countries will reinforce our bonds of friendship across the global south, strengthen our partnerships in both sides of the Atlantic, and deepen engagements in the multilateral platforms." Each stop has a significance. Ghana is a fast-growing economy. Their top export market is India. The Caribbean is home to a large Indian origin community, and Trinidad and Tobago hosts nearly half of them. Then you have Argentina, a major economy in Latin America, also home to large reserves of critical minerals like lithium and graphite. Brazil is obviously a BRICS member. It is also the largest economy in Latin America. And finally, you have Namibia. They gave us cheetahs back in 2022. They're also emerging as a key trading partner. Trade has gone from 3 million to 600 million in 2 decades. So none of these stops are random. There is a thought behind each of them. The question is, what is the larger strategy? Like the Prime Minister said, it's about the global south. This refers to developing and underdeveloped nations. Most of them are in Africa, Asia and Latin America. For a long time, these countries were seen as basket cases, but now the West wants to court them. The global south has a young, booming population. They have key resources, including rare earths, and they have strength in numbers. The United Nations has 193 member countries. The global south makes up almost 2/3 of that. So you can imagine the power. Having said that, this group is not united. It does not speak in one voice anywhere. And this is where India comes in. New Delhi wants to lead the global south countries, whether it's on debt relief or climate change initiatives or countering extremism. But you can't lead without reaching out, without visiting those countries, without speaking to their people. Until recently, India was not doing that. But guess who was? China. Beijing has made inroads into Latin America and Africa. Latin America is seen as America's backyard, but China is plowing ahead. By 2035, they could become the region's top trading partner. The Chinese could be the top trading partner of Latin America by 2035. Basically, China could overtake the US. This was unthinkable until a few years ago. In Africa, China is already number one. They are ahead of the US, Europe, and India on trade, but thankfully, there is an opening. A lot of global south countries are unhappy with China's loans. It has plunged them into a debt trap. And this gives India the opportunity to capitalize. We cannot match Beijing's checkbook, but we can offer alternatives. Because India has something that China does not. We have great ties with Western institutions. And what do we get in return? A strong political coalition, whether it's to call out Pakistani terrorism or to reform global agencies like the United Nations or to sideline China. Many of these global south countries are swing states. Yes, ideology matters to them, but they do not belong to any political camp. They belong to the side of peace and prosperity. And India shares the same worldview. The key is to convince the global south. You think HBO's Succession was riveting? Wait till you hear about this one. It's got geopolitics, it's got India-China rivalries, it's got a religious figurehead, and it's got a mysterious reincarnation ritual. I'm talking about the Dalai Lama. He is the spiritual and political head of Tibetan Buddhists. The current Dalai Lama lives in India. He fled Chinese persecution around 6 decades ago, so you can imagine how old he is. The Dalai Lama will turn 90 on Sunday, 90 years old on Sunday, so naturally there are questions about his successor. In the past, he's given mixed signals. Once he said the tradition would end with him. No more reincarnation, no more Dalai Lama. That's what he said. Then on a different occasion, he suggested that his successor could be a woman. But today he set the record straight. Listen to what the Dalai Lama said.
If it is about Lama's reincarnation, when all the followers have unanimously said that the reincarnation should continue, then it is obvious that it will come. Since my September 24th, 2011 statement, which states that responsibility for doing so will rest exclusively with members of the Gadin Phodrang Trust, the office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, they should accordingly carry out the procedures of search and recognition in accordance with past tradition. I hereby reiterate that the Gadin Phodrang Trust has sole authority to recognize the future reincarnation. No one else has any such authority to interfere in this matter.
3 things to note here. One, the tradition will continue. The institution of the Dalai Lama will not end. Second, the successor will be chosen by a trust that was set up by the Dalai Lama himself, meaning he wants to retain control of the process, if not him, at least his allies. And finally, the third point, the Dalai Lama says no one else can meddle in the process. He was clearly talking about China. Beijing has total disdain for the Dalai Lama. They have called him a wolf in sheep's clothing. And China does not like this plan. They want the authority to approve the successor.
The reincarnation of the Dalai Lama must adhere to the principle of domestic search, golden urn draw and approval by the central government, and be handled in accordance with religious rituals, historical customs, and national laws and regulations.
Strange, isn't it? China is a communist country. The government does not believe in religion. The Communist Party of China is officially atheist. The members are prohibited from practicing religion. So why this obsession with the Dalai Lama? Because it is political. Quick history lesson here. Tibet did not willingly join China. It was annexed. It was taken by force in 1950. The locals never accepted Chinese control, so Beijing needs a tool to win over the Tibetans. And what better tool than a loyal Dalai Lama, a leader appointed and controlled by Beijing? That is why the Communist Party of China is so interested in the succession. Which brings us to the process itself. Tibetans believe that the Dalai Lama is reincarnated. When he dies, his spirit is transferred to a young boy. The Tibetan community's job is to find that boy. The current Dalai Lama was found in similar fashion in 1937. He was just 2 years old then, in Tibet. Chances are the next Dalai Lama will be found outside China. If not, Beijing could whisk him away. In fact, that has happened before. You see, the Dalai Lama is the top Tibetan leader, the senior most. At number 2 is the Panchen Lama. The 11th Panchen Lama was identified in 1995, and within days, he was kidnapped by the Communist Party. 3 decades have passed since then. No one has seen the Panchen Lama. The boy was just 6 years old at the time. China abducted him, a 6-year-old boy. So you can imagine the lengths that China will go. And that is why the Dalai Lama is being so careful. He has previously said that his successor will be born in India. Other top Tibetan officials have echoed this line.
There is no traditional kind of restriction. The Dalai Lama should born in Tibet. The Dalai Lama born in Mongolia, the third one, and the Dalai Lama born today in India, the sixth Dalai Lama, and there's no nationality or geographical boundary.
There are some 100,000 Tibetans in India. They have set up a government in exile. It's easily possible to choose a successor from this community. But for New Delhi, it's a bit tricky. Yes, it gives India leverage over China. At the same time, you don't want to get too close, especially in the middle of a reset. And that is why we call this succession revetting. It promises to raise temperatures and strain diplomatic ties. But what will it mean for Tibetans, for their way of life and their religion? Well, there are 2 parts to it. Tibet was a global cause in the last century. Hollywood was championing it. US presidents were talking about it. The Dalai Lama was even given the Nobel Peace Prize. But of late, the movement has lost steam. Prime Minister Modi has never met the Dalai Lama, nor has Donald Trump or Joe Biden. The Tibetan movement was basically forgotten. Perhaps this succession drama will revive it. Perhaps it will spark interest again, and we saw signs of that earlier today. Every global publication was covering the Dalai Lama's speech. Having said that, attention is not enough. You need to follow it up with a plan. Naturally, you cannot expect a young successor to do that, so that job will fall to the current Dalai Lama. What is his vision for Tibet? Initially, he wanted independence from China. But around 2010, he made a U-turn. He gave up the call for complete independence. Instead, he demanded autonomy. Basically, a special status for Tibet within China. Of course, even that is not acceptable to Beijing. It may not even be acceptable to many younger Tibetans. And that will be the key factor going forward. Yes, a succession will create a reset, but that reset could go either way. When the moment comes, every country will have to take a tough call. Every country, including India. For our next story, imagine this. There is a room filled with explosives. Inside, there is a group of bitter rivals, each one of them holding a matchstick. Suddenly, one of them pulls out a flamethrower. No one has to light a flame because in that very moment, the balance of power has shifted. And this scenario is no longer hypothetical. China has tested a weapon just like that flamethrower, a hypersonic missile, one that can shift the balance of power in the region. The missile is called the Fatien 2. It's an upgrade from Fatien 1. That too was a hypersonic missile. It was tested in 2022, so 3 years back. And now China has upgraded it. The Fatien 2 was tested on Monday, apparently with an improved design. Here's what we know about it. The biggest selling point, of course, is the speed. This missile can fly 5 times faster than the speed of sound. It can probably even exit the atmosphere like a spacecraft. This is a common characteristic of all hypersonic weapons, that is their speed. But what makes the Chinese missile unique is its execution. It has a special kind of engine called the RBCC, the rocket-based combined cycle. It is made up of parts from different engines like the ones used in rockets and jets. They've been put together to create a faster machine, also more fuel efficient. And this is what makes it stand out. All missiles need fuel to fly, of course. Usually 2 kinds of fuel are used, liquid hydrogen and kerosene. Hydrogen, because it burns easily, it generates a lot of energy, and it's cleaner. When it burns, it releases only water. But storing it is an issue. You need powerful cooling equipment to store hydrogen. The other option is hydrocarbons like kerosene. Easy to store, safer to handle. But kerosene is a dirty fuel and it does not perform as well as hydrogen. So these are the 2 choices, hydrogen and kerosene, each with its pros and cons. It is like picking between a petrol car and an EV. And this is where Fatien 2 has an advantage. It's like a hybrid car. It doesn't have to choose between the 2 fuels. China has tested this missile with kerosene and hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is a chemical compound. It is made up of hydrogen and oxygen. So China has basically combined the best of both the worlds, the power of hydrogen with the convenience of kerosene. And this combination is being called a game changer. The fuel is easier to store. The missiles can be launched at a short notice, which gives them a lot of flexibility. The engine can be adjusted mid-flight. The missile can speed up or slow down as required. It can change its flight path. It can also fly autonomously, meaning it doesn't need a human to hit the target. China claims to have achieved all of this. The US has been monitoring their missile program closely. In 2020, Washington made an assessment. It said that China wants to build a powerful missile arsenal, one that can support the Chinese military and its objectives in the region. In 2019, China alone tested more missiles than the rest of the world combined. And now they've expanded their program. They're adding hypersonic missiles to their arsenal. India too has been tracking these developments. A report came out last month. It said that India was preparing to test a new hypersonic missile. Only a handful of countries have cracked this technology. The list includes the US, China and Russia. Last year, India had conducted a flight trial. It had tested its first hypersonic missile. So India is trying to catch up, and the US, of course, wants to beat the Chinese. A new arms race is now underway, where hypersonic weapons are the next frontier. Flying used to feel like the safest bet. You boarded a flight, you dozed off, you landed. But lately, flying feels different. 1 minute you're cruising at 32,000 feet, the next, the plane drops. Oxygen masks fall, panic spreads, and passengers start texting their last goodbyes. In the past few months, flights across Asia, from India to Japan to Indonesia, have turned into terrifying headlines. Is it just a string of bad luck? Or is the aviation industry facing a deeper crisis? Our next report explores.
By the time the oxygen masks dropped, it was already too late for calm. The Japan Airlines flight from Shanghai was cruising at 32,800 feet. That's when, according to passengers, the plane suddenly plunged. It wasn't a dip or a wobble, the kind that makes your stomach flip. It was a plummet. Oxygen masks dropped. Passengers started panicking. Some even typed out farewell notes on their phones. The Boeing 737 eventually made an emergency landing at Kansai Airport, Osaka. Everyone survived, but many left with psychological scars and nagging questions. In the past few months, flight after flight has made headlines on how they almost didn't get there. On June 12, an Air India Boeing 787 Dreamliner, on its way to London, crashed shortly after takeoff in Ahmedabad. The crash killed 241 of the 242 people on board. 2 days later, another Air India flight, this time to Vienna, dropped 900 feet mid-air shortly after departure. And just days after that, yet another Air India flight, this one from Mumbai to Chennai, made an emergency return due to a burning smell in the cabin. Another Batik Air flight in Indonesia barely escaped disaster in a storm, one wing terrifyingly close to scraping the ground. It's not just you, everyone's wondering the same thing. Is flying still safe? The short answer is yes. The longer answer is not as safe as it was pretending to be. There's one name that keeps popping up in nearly all of these stories. Boeing. The American aircraft giant, once the gold standard of aviation, now finds itself in trouble. The Boeing 737-800 was involved in the Japan Airlines emergency descent. It is part of the same family that has been linked to over a dozen fatal crashes since 2000. This isn't just bad luck, it is systemic. While Boeing insists that the newer models are now safe, confidence is still in free fall. Now, let's be clear, flying is still statistically the safest way to travel. You're far more likely to die from choking on food than from a plane crash. But statistics don't always soothe fear, especially when there are such stories of mid-air emergencies. To add to that, there are a few problems. Aircraft are aging. Many airlines, especially in developing countries, are flying planes well past their prime, even as maintenance costs rise. Then there are workforce gaps. The global aviation industry is facing a shortage of skilled pilots, air traffic controllers, and maintenance workers. So, new employees are being trained faster, some say, too fast. Also, there is increased vigilance right now. After the Ahmedabad crash, authorities and airlines are hyper-aware of even small safety incidents. And last, there is public sensitivity. With so many incidents in such quick succession, flyers are understandably nervous. What used to be considered precautionary now feels like a near miss. So, is flying getting scarier? Not exactly. But cracks, corners cut, and compromises long ignored are now out in the open. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what the industry needed. Because fear can be dangerous. But denial is worse.
Our next story starts with a cartoon. It shows two winged figures floating above a war-torn skyline. One says, "Peace be upon you, I'm Muhammad." The other replies, "Peace be upon you, I'm Musa." Below them is a skyline, plus bombs, rubble and chaos. The cartoon was published by Le Monde. It is one of Turkey's oldest and most beloved satirical magazines. According to its editors, this cartoon was a cry for unity, a brotherhood between faiths torn apart by modern wars. But the Turkish government saw something else here. For them, it was blasphemy, an insult to the Prophet. So within hours, the cartoon sparked protests. There were police crackdowns. Le Monde's offices were raided. 4 people were arrested, including the cartoonist. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan called the cartoon, and I'm quoting, a vile provocation.
It is a clear incitement disguised as humor. a vile provocation. In fact, our security and judiciary immediately took action regarding this hate crime. The magazine in question was confiscated, and the necessary processes were initiated. Those who are insolent towards our prophet and other prophets will be held accountable before the law. We will follow up on this. I especially want our youth to be at ease.
Küstahlık edenler bunun hesabını hukuk önünde vereceklerdir.
As you may know, in Islam, any visual depiction of the Prophet is forbidden. Caricatures are seen as blasphemy, and Liman knows this. The magazine has skirted around religious sentiments for years, so why did it publish the cartoon now? The magazine insists it was not a cartoon of the Prophet, it was a tribute to a Muslim victim of war, a victim named Muhammad. But Turkey is having none of it. The government is cracking down, rounding up the magazine staff, even dragging some from their homes. One person was handcuffed and hauled up a staircase. On the streets, there have been massive demonstrations, protesters demanding, and I'm quoting again, blood for blood.
Net bir şekilde ifade edelim.
Let us state this clearly. Any attack on Allah and His Messenger is much more immoral and much more aggressive than the bombs that the Zionists are dropping on people in Gaza.
Halkımızın üzerine attığı bombalardan.
So what is this really about? And I ask because in Erdogan's Turkey, blasphemy is often just a cover story. It's usually about authoritarianism. And here's where things get stranger. You see, Erdogan and Liman have long been frenemies. The magazine made cartoons about the president. They mocked his policies in persona. But in the early 2000s, Erdogan played it cool. He even laughed at the jokes. The Turkish president once said, "Let the cartoonists draw." He said cartoons were good for democracy. Fast forward to 2025, Erdogan is having cartoonists arrested on live television, and it shows how Turkey has changed in the last 2 decades. Journalists are routinely jailed, social media is heavily policed, and cartoons trigger crackdowns. This latest one is just an excuse. It's a political weapon dressed up as a moral crusade. And Liman's editor has called it out. He compared this case to Charlie Hebdo, the French satirical magazine that published cartoons of the Prophet. In 2015, the magazine came under attack. 12 people were killed in that attack. This time in Turkey, the attack is coming from the state. Arrest warrants are out. Erdogan is threatening more legal action, and the magazine is promising to fight back. Like I said, this is just a cover story. In Erdogan's Turkey, the real blasphemy is not the cartoon, it is the facade of free speech. And we're not saying that you have to agree with the cartoon. You can disagree with it. You can even find it offensive. But you cannot have governments decide which jokes are legal. Because then, the only jokes left will be the ones they write themselves. And authoritarian regimes are terrible at punchlines. Now let's shift our attention to West Africa, specifically the landlocked country of Mali. This is the 8th largest country on the continent. It is currently ruled by a military junta, and it has witnessed a terror attack again, the 3rd attack over the last month. An Al-Qaeda-linked group has claimed responsibility for all 3 attacks. The last one was the worst, a series of simultaneous and coordinated attacks. They targeted military posts in several towns across the country. In response, the army killed 80 militants, 80. So what does this collapsing security mean for Mali and the wider Sahel region? Here's a report.
Mali is a landlocked country in West Africa. It is home to about 24 million people, and many of them are still in shock. As plumes of smoke billow from their homes, after heavy gunfire and explosions in their towns. A series of simultaneous terror attacks have struck Mali. The attacks took place on military posts across 7 towns in the central and western regions. Mali's army says that it repelled the attacks and killed more than 80 militants, without saying if there were any other casualties.
The enemy has suffered significant losses wherever they have attacked the defense and security forces. The provisional toll reports more than 80 terrorists neutralized, along with the recovery of a substantial arsenal of war.
JNIM has claimed responsibility for the attacks. This stands for Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin. JNIM is an Islamist group. It was formed in 2017 as a merger of several militant factions. It is linked to Al-Qaeda and is the terror group's West African affiliate. JNIM says that its attack was coordinated and high quality, and that it had taken control of 3 army barracks. This is a major setback for Mali's junta. Mali has been racked by a deadly Islamist insurgency for years now. More than a decade ago, militants swept into the country, they captured towns and destroyed homes. But in 2020, military juntas seized power in back-to-back coups. They promised to restore stability, and they have fought violent groups since then, but with little success. The junta has also broken Mali's traditional ties with its former colonial power France. It has expelled Western troops, and instead relied on Russian mercenaries to counter terror threats. Since 2021, Russian presence has grown in the country. The mercenaries, along with the junta, have been accused of abusing and torturing civilians. In recent weeks, not just the junta, but the Russian mercenaries have also come under attack. After all, JNIM's recent attack is the 3rd major assault over the last month. On June 2nd, militants targeted an army camp, a military airport, and Russian mercenaries in the ancient city of Timbuktu. And a day before, another attack by the same group killed at least 30 soldiers in another city. These attacks are the latest sign of the collapsing security in Mali, as well as the wider Sahel region, where many different Islamist militant groups have been fighting to gain access to West Africa's coastline. If they get access to the coast, it would only make them more powerful, because it would increase their capacity for arms trafficking and smuggling. The Sahel region is already called the epicenter of terrorism on the globe. It accounts for more than half of all deaths worldwide from terrorism. And the recent attacks in Mali are only a signal that the worst may be yet to come.
Squid Game. It's a strange pairing of words, but at this point, it is pretty much a household name. Squid Game is a Korean language drama. It is a fictional series. It follows cash-strapped players who are lured into playing a series of games. Korean games for children, that's what they play. But these games come with deadly high stakes. Characters are shot in the head, stabbed to death, and even cremated alive. It's chilling and extreme. Also very popular. Squid Game has managed to keep the audience both attentive and terrified. Episode after episode, people sit on the edge of their seats, unwilling to miss a single bloody moment. And this response has transcended national boundaries. The Korean series is a global sensation. Squid Game Season 1 became the most watched program in Netflix history. It was seen by about 142 million households in the first month. Season 2 of the series gained 68 million views in the first 4 days. This was more viewership than any other Netflix series has achieved in the premiere week. Now Season 3 is out, and it has broken Netflix viewership records again. Over its first 3 days, the series has racked up more than 60 million views. This is a new record for the platform. And this is only a small part of the Squid Game phenomenon. It has inspired endless memes, merch, Halloween costumes, even interactive experiences. By the end of Season 2, Squid Game was already a $900 million business. So if you haven't watched it yet, you may be wondering, is the show that good? Well, according to critics, the first season was brilliant, but after that, reviews have been mixed to positive. So what is the big deal then? Why is the world still hooked? Well, there is a range of factors: great characters, the dystopian theme, the raw, bleak messages that reflect on reality like debt and unemployment, also the shock and gore. Now, this is a niche genre, and it is a major reason why Squid Game is so successful. For decades now, gory or bloody and disturbing images have been a crucial part of the horror genre. But over time, gore's influence has grown. The world has begun to feel more confusing and even threatening. So shows have increasingly focused on real-life concerns, and gore has enhanced the drama. Squid Game is an example of this. But so is The Handmaid's Tale. This is a dystopian series. It brings the fears of women in Trump's America to TV screens. And it has never shied away from gore. Series that have routine levels of violence have also upped their gore game. Case in point, Game of Thrones. And in many ways, the horror genre has evolved as well. Take The Vegetarian by Han Kang. This book has some serious gory imagery. Now, all of this begs a question. Why is this much craft from books to shows this bloody? And if so many of us are repulsed by blood and violence, then why do we love it in our entertainment? Because it keeps us hooked. And research says so. Let me ask you a question. Have you watched the Game of Thrones? What is the one scene that you vividly remember? Is it the brutal massacre in the Red Wedding? What about The Godfather? Let me guess, the horse's head. You probably don't need or want these memories, but you remember them clearly. Because shock and gore engage us. The scenes may be disgusting and disturbing, but they provoke visceral shock and excitement. And we cannot forget them. Of course, not everyone loves it, but there are many people who do. Studies say that gore stimulates our brains. When consumed in healthy doses, it can be cathartic. Because we experience something that may upset us in real life, and we do it from an emotionally secure point of view. So when the scene ends, after feelings of fear, happy hormones rush in, bringing relief. And this feels good. That is what research says. But like I said, gore is for those who can stomach it. It is not for everyone, and it can go very wrong. A lot of questions are still up for debate. Are the gory scenes age appropriate? Are they good storytelling? Or have we crossed a line here? And how much is too much? There's still a lot of grey, like I said. So shock and gore sells. But is it worth biting your nails down to the skin? We say you be the judge. There's a new showpiece at the Trivandrum airport, a $100 million stealth fighter jet. I'm sure you've read about it. A British F-35 made an emergency landing on June 14th. 2 weeks later, it is still stuck there. We're talking about a lethal war machine here. The US calls it the most advanced jet ever made. But in India, it's become a joke. Well, yes, we treat our guests extremely well, but 17 days is pushing it. And now even Kerala's tourism department has joined in. They're trolling the stranded war plane. Take a look.
I have this feeling that something's wrong with it. Something is wrong with the left phalange.
बोला तो दिखाएगा हाथी, निकली चीटी।
चीटी?
लगता है मामा जी की उम्र हो गई रे बाबा। आप भी ठीक करके देता हूँ।
फ्यूज कंडक्ट निकाल लिए हैं।
अरे जब भी ऊपर चढ़ता आप बंद क्यों कर देते हो?
ये जब भी तू चढ़ता है ना, ये बंद होता है। पनौती, उतर, उतर नीचे, उतर।
Now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. An Israeli strike destroys a warehouse in Gaza City. A Catalonia wildfire kills 2 people as a scorching heat wave grips Europe, and China launches its first humanoid robot soccer league in Beijing. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1972, India and Pakistan signed the similar agreement. It was signed 8 months after the 1971 Indo-Pakistan War. It mandated that all outstanding issues will be discussed bilaterally, meaning no third-party intervention. Islamabad threatened to quit it this year after India struck terror camps in the country following the Pahalgam attack. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.